Hello, and welcome back to the Marketing Brief, a podcast where we briefly talk with experts across the industry about marketing. And we're really excited today to be joined by Sylvie Schnaier. Very happy to have you. Welcome, Sylvie.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
I'd love to have you just introduce yourself and then we can get to talking.
Yeah, sounds good. So I've been in enterprise brands and marketing as well as communication roles for the last 20 plus years across in-house roles at Johnson & Johnson, as well as agency roles focused on media planning and buying.
Nice.
I'm currently consulting right now for a healthcare small B2B client after spending 14 years inside Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of your expertise lies in the healthcare space.
Correct. As well as CPG and OTC as well.
Nice.
You got it.
Awesome. Well, we're really excited to be joined by you today. I have some topics that I've been writing about lately that I'd love to see if anything resonates with you. We just rolled out, we being me, Aquan Consulting, just rolled out our macro trends for 2026, which are authenticity, community/people, real people, and value. Which is a kind of a look towards the economy in 2026. If anything in there resonates with you, I also love talking about AI and tech adoption, whether it be an internal factor within your organization, how do you bring that into the processes that you have, and external factors being consumers, right? How do we talk to consumers in 2026 across consumer trends, adoption, and just the economy, of course, which is affecting all of us. Let me know where you'd like to start. I'm happy to bounce ideas off of you in any of those areas.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with authenticity, since I think that is a critical component and a core value that really goes across a lot of things, especially AI, and it goes of course for people. So when I think about authenticity, I think about a few things. Number one, I think about brands for a long time now need to be more authentic and really talk about their brand, what role they play, what problem they solve, and the value that they bring into a person's daily life. I think when we were first starting in the business, it was interesting because it was a lot of rah, and just give me a cool celebrity or put a really cool song in my commercial or a fun tagline or something like that. And you didn't really need to lean on your core value proposition, or maybe you did, but very likely because you had all these other fun things going for you, at least on the brands that I worked on. And I think where we see today now, especially with every single thing being on YouTube or TikTok or some other, short video platform, it's like if your message is not authentically communicating like why we should care and what your product does, but in a way that is authentic, then I think that you have no chance of making it. And I think that's true both from a consumer standpoint in terms of what's resonating and what's connecting. And I also think that's true from an AI standpoint, because as you look at LLMs and where people are going now to search for information, they're going to the chat GPTs of the world or Perplexity or Gemini, what have you. And they're asking the robot, so to speak, for brand recommendations or discovery things. And if your brand is not authentic on the back end of that, where the LLM search, so for example, Reddit and YouTube are two really highly popular cited sources. What are those, if you look at those two platforms, generally speaking, what's their foundation built on? I would argue authenticity. So to me, it's kind of like it's forcing the brands to be authentic, both from hey, consumers are telling us, I'm not going to really engage with you unless your content means something and is either entertaining or fun. And then the robots are not going to serve you up if you're not being talked about in an authentic way.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you for taking this subject. I really love it too. Totally agree with you that it's always been important, but now there's a heightened sense to it because AI slop exists. People can spot it. People are looking for M dashes in your writing to see if it's like just written by ChatGPT. I've seen a huge rise in Reddit. Reddit's come out with an advertising product, but consumers almost choosing like, hey, can I go to the place where it's actually people talking about a subject versus just I'm going to get it spit out from one of the AI agents, which I think is interesting. And I've just kind of seen that over the last couple of years. I don't know if you've seen that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's a big reason that Reddit is, become this huge global
Yeah.
phenomenon, if you will, is because up until recently is one of the few places you could actually go to get ad-free information and really like that word of mouth, so to speak, kind of content. Of course,
Mm.
now that's up for grabs, as you just mentioned. They've got their ad product as does ChatGPT, who recently,
Yeah.
just last week or so, came out and said that they are now experimenting with ads. So I
Yeah.
think as those places begin to have advertising, all the more reason, people are going to look for then other places where they can go to get authentic content from their friends,
Yeah.
from other people that they trust, because it's hard to trust content otherwise, and
Yes.
you don't really know what's being served to you. Is it because someone paid the highest value to bid that placement, or is it really what you're looking for?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm a fellow consultant. When I'm talking to clients, I'm always working from the consumer back, right? And trying to build authentic messages that, resonate with the consumer. I studied David Ogilvy when I was in college, like studying advertising. And this one quote always stuck with me. He said, "The consumer is not a moron. The consumer is your wife." So there's a little inherent misogyny in there, but you could say, the
Yeah.
consumer is your partner. But I always loved it because I think people often think advertising is tricking people, and it doesn't work, right? Like consumers are so smart, they're so savvy, they know how to look things up, they know how to spot things that aren't real. So if you're not trying to be authentic, you're not trying to really communicate with them and starting from a position of understanding their needs, then your message is just not going to resonate. Like that's been true in the past, and it's definitely still true now.
Totally. And I could not agree anymore. I actually hadn't heard of that quote, but I too loved David Ogilvy and read a lot of his stuff early on in my career. Although that quote escaped me. But it's spot on, and it's even, I would say, more so pronounced to this day, right?
Yeah.
Because there
Yes.
are places you can go to really see if what the brand, are they tricking me, to your point, or are they not?
Yeah.
20 years ago was a lot harder to really like trust and verify. There
Hmm.
was no verification.
Yep.
Now it's like the reverse. It's only, verify. And I feel like if you're not, again, authentic and honest and going for why your brand existed in the first place. I mean, you were created, right? Because there was a need in the marketplace. There was a missing, opportunity or gap in someone's life. And your
Yeah.
brand was created, your product was created rather, to serve that need. And we just have gone so far past the point of sharing like why you even exist in this world.
Yeah.
So it's like brands shouldn't even try to be authentic. It should be like the thing that you do.
Yes.
It
Right.
shouldn't even be like a discussion. I think the
Yeah.
discussion should be, how do we best articulate ourselves
Yeah.
for social channels? How do we make platform native content that's true to who we are, offer something valuable to our consumer while at the same time respecting the forum in which they're experiencing it? But again, it's we've just come so far from that. But
Yeah.
I, like you, trying to educate and move brands back to really the basics,
Hmm.
except coupled with more of this digital,
Yeah.
social, native content sort of aspect.
Music to my ears. Like foundational marketing is kind of how I talk to my clients now. Just like understand your consumer, where it comes from. I loved your point though about like it's just what you do, right? To be authentic, like it needs to be an extension of your ethos as a brand or as a company.
Totally.
Why do you exist, right? And then your message comes from that. It's not like you then go to market with, hey, let's talk about it this way, right? It needs to be an extension of why you exist. What is your ethos? And then how do I communicate that to my consumers?
Yeah. And what is the most quote unquote fun way to communicate that
Mm.
to your consumers? I think we get lost, in so many meetings and politics and everything else that makes, doing marketing inside big organizations complicated. But at the end of the day, it's like if you were David Ogilvy and you were thinking this is your wife, how would you explain it's your wife? And if you were over
Yeah.
dinner, how would it look if it was over dinner one-on-one versus at a party where there were a lot of people. And I think you could just apply that lens, right? Social media to me is like
Hmm.
a party. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of background noise. You're competing for attention, but you still need to show up in a way that sort of meets that need versus maybe a website, which is a little more one-on-ish,
Yeah.
where you could assume it's almost like a private opportunity. You could go a little deeper. You could
Yeah.
share a lot more factual information, which, by the way, very helpful for the LLMs to cite you if you're bringing fact-based information. So I'd love to see us get back to a place where those are the conversations that we're having, but the DNA is exactly as you said, it's the ethos of your brand. Like this is
Hmm.
why you exist. And now let's debate, how do we bring that to life? What proof point is the most compelling? What's going to convince someone to buy us over someone else? And what is that sticking point? Where is there a barrier? And if so, why?
Yeah.
How do we get around that?
Yeah. The social media as a conversation, I always really love that analogy. I think of kind of all of marketing as a conversation, and was working with a client recently, kind of explaining it to them as a conversation. It's like if you were in a conversation with your friend or your wife or your partner, the first thing you wouldn't do is just give advice, right? It wouldn't just be like, here's what I'm offering. Here's
Right.
everything that's available. Here's the price. Here's this, right? You need to relate to the person you're talking to. And it's the same way when you're advertising a brand, right? You need to come in and say, okay, I understand these are your needs, or I recognize this might be an issue you're having, and then come in with the solution after that, right?
Totally, 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 100%. It's almost like another way to think about it too. It's like showing up at a dinner party. Again, it's
Yeah.
like you wouldn't show up at a dinner party being like, "Here's my coupon," "Hey everyone." You would just gently introduce yourself, lean into the conversation. Where is their energy?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. Know when to sit back if it's getting
Yeah.
heated. Know when you could offer value and it's actually being appreciated, and people look at you around the table like, "Oh, that's a really interesting point of view. Thank you
Hmm.
for sharing that." And then maybe you could layer
Yeah.
on, how to get more information from you. And certainly with digital products, personalization, CRM, there's so many opportunities to do that. So
Yeah.
it shouldn't be
That's a
it
that
shouldn't be so complicated.
I was just thinking, that's a good segue. I was just thinking of, so I've done a lot of writing about the marketing flywheel. That's my preferred marketing versus the funnel. I think we just have so many opportunities to reach consumers at different stages that they might be in their decision flywheel. Is that something that you subscribe to? Is that something that you think about kind of? And I'll give you a little bit more. Like I think of setting up triggers for consumers now, right? Like if my brand is, offering, let's say, medication, right? For pain medication. Like, what are the triggers that would lead them to be in the mind space for that? And they might come in not knowing about your brand. They might come in knowing about your brand. They might come in with an immediate need, and setting up multiple messages to be ready for that consumer when they come in. Is that something that resonates with you as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, 100% on the flywheel. Like,
Yeah.
old school pyramid, dead, died. Please don't. It's not coming back. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of all the digital technologies that have been around, honestly, for a while now, is that you can sort of almost preload, is one way to think about it, and like, or
Yeah.
stack your messages
Yeah.
and modify them based on exactly you said, whether it's a trigger or something else, previous purchase, anything that you're sort of segmenting your audience by. You can
Hmm.
create all these beautiful, personalized, well articulated pieces of content to match that consumer, where they are. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. But I think this also goes back to the piece about authentic, because you could do that, but the outcome in which your consumer sees your message, if it's like fluffy,
Hmm.
or buzzy or way too, salesy, that's not going to land. So you might
Yeah.
have had the right infrastructure in place in terms of your segmentation, content personalization, reaching the right multi-channel, but the creative is still very powerful because you've got to have that authenticity, as you started with, I think, in order to best connect with your customer.
Absolutely. Way to bring it back around to authenticity, Sylvia. Love that.
Great.
Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I'd like to get you out on kind of a question that might take you into your personal life, but could also be professional. What's something you're excited about right now?
Yeah, well, I'll keep on the trend of what we've been talking about. I'm really excited about the shopping cart phenomenon that's going on in ChatGPT.
Okay.
I can't wait, to be honest, to have a new way to shop for brands. Even though I have been online shopping since like it first came out, and I literally cannot live without Amazon and Walmart and all the Instacart and all the
Hmm.
same places as everybody else. When I think of what the future might be, and I think that Chat GBT for me could be almost like a mall where I don't actually have to go anywhere else. I could just visually walk, go with me down this mall analogy for a second, but
Yes.
in a mall, I'm in one central location, but I'm going to all the stores and then I'm walking around with my bags. So I went to one stop shop, but I got my sneakers, I got my makeup, I got some food, I got a lot of different things, but I just went to the mall, right?
Yeah.
Compare that now to how we go. I have to go to Amazon, I have to go to Instacart. We used to think it was efficient, right? Because the
Hmm.
alternative is going to each and every store. In my mind, it's actually really annoying. By the time I'm done with I spent all my day on these different apps. So I
Yeah.
could actually just have that experience inside one experience like a chat GBT because they're facilitating that to me. Now,
Yeah.
coupled with the brand recommendations, I think that is like really next level. But I'm just super excited about what that looks like. How does that end up working? And can we really get to a place where as me as a human being, I have now saved an hour, 2, 3, 4
Yeah.
hours, and my whole shopping experience is reimagined.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, we know that consumers price compare, like they do it like crazy. Like Black Friday is all about like how can I get the lowest price here? But yeah, really interesting if it's all just coming to you in one space and then you're empowering it with all of the data that you've put into to the LLM as well of just like here are the things I like, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for. Then it just anytime you can save time as well as money,
Totally. But this is
that's a
again where
win.
it is still a partnership because if the brands haven't figured this out yet and they
Yeah.
haven't modified and optimized their site, their landing page, their e-com pages, their shopper pages, everything, then that information may not get properly submitted to the chat GBTs, the LLMs.
That's awesome. I love your analogy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I mean, that's my own literal.
I love it. It's a very relatable analogy. Everyone knows mall shopping, and a lot of us are nostalgic for it.
Exactly.
I know you're a consultant. How do people get in touch with you? Is LinkedIn the best way to
Yep.
find you? Awesome.
LinkedIn is the best way. Shoot me a message.
Awesome. Great. Well, we're very happy that our guest today has been Sylvie Schnaier. And thank you for spending time with us and have a great day.